por explicarnos un poco más sobre estas nuevas tendencias que nos hacen ser más conscientes al invertir. Tenemos algunas preguntas del público. Primero para Frederick. Frederick, ¿cómo ves tú la demanda de productos factoriales en Latinoamérica? ¿Está sesgado por el tipo de clientes o por la reputación del país?
Sí, gracias. I will answer in English. So I'm not that particularly focused on the Latin American market, to be very transparent. So I prefer to share with you what we see globally in terms of evolution of demand regarding multi-factor strategies. It is quite interesting because to some extent it is very related to what was discussed by Gonzalo and what was discussed by Ron as well. We see indeed more and more demand from investors, institutional investors globally, looking to integrate ESG in their multi-factor program. The big question, the question they continue to ask us all the time is, do you consider ESG as a factor? Do you consider ESG as a performance enhancing factor or as a risk management instrument? At the moment, the evidences are relatively scarce. What we see and what we've seen, however, is that to some extent, to a certain degree, you can use ESG as a forward-looking indicator of risk. Just this to say that increasingly, when investors are looking to allocate to multi-factor strategy, and this is typically the case of most institutional investors, at least in Europe now, they are taking into account ESG to a certain degree. They are looking for solutions to reduce the carbon footprint of their multi-factor portfolio, and so on. To some degree, it is also to some extent related to what Ron was mentioning, because increasingly when you manage this type of multi-factor portfolio and when you integrate non-financial data like ESG data, you need to be able to work with increasingly large data set. You need to be able to work with and to visualize in increasingly sophisticated way your portfolio, because we have many different items to work on and many different items to take into account when we build our portfolio. And this is why the rise of, I would not say yet intelligent artificial, but to the very least the rise of big data visualization techniques is something that we need to use increasingly when we manage our portfolio, because we have so much data to work with and so much data to integrate based on our clients' demand that we need to have the right tool to do that. So to make it simple, a lot of ESG, lot of data, customization based on client request and particular sensitivity on issues like ESG.
Perfecto, gracias. Una pregunta de Germán Larraín para Ron. Ron, la industria financiera en Chile está detrás de la curva en comparación al resto del mundo. Y es así como muchos actores recién se preguntan en cómo implementar la transformación digital. ¿Cómo los convencerías a la industria local para explotar los datos que ellos producen?
Okay, so the first question to answer the question is, what is Goldman Sachs? I think everybody knows the name Goldman Sachs. What is Goldman Sachs? Is it a bank or is it something else? So when I visited Goldman Sachs a few years ago, they shared with me a number that I was just very surprised. They said, you know, we have 80,000, this was a few years ago, that we have 80,000 employees. They asked me, how many employees are in the banking, in traditional banking? How many employees are in technical roles? 50,000 of the 80,000 were in technical roles. They said, we're not a bank, we're a technology company. If you think of 50,000 people in a company who are in technology roles, many of them who are software developers, it makes Goldman Sachs one of the biggest software developers in the world. That's not a bank, that's a software developer. Now, they're not selling commercial software, they're creating products. They are driving digital transformation, they are driving services to their customer. So I think that's the first question banks have to ask. And I think for a good example, and I apologize that I do not remember the name of this bank, but I met the CEO of a very innovative Spanish bank probably about 3 years ago. And I was shocked, again, as I am often from meeting with the banks. He was not a traditional banker. He came up through the technology ranks. He was a CIO. It was the first time I had ever heard of a CIO being named by a bank board of directors to be the CEO of a bank. Why? Because that bank realized that its future was going to be driven by technology. They understood the Goldman Sachs model, they understood where they had to go, and they understood that the drive to digital transformation was only going to be led not by a traditional banker, and I apologize to everybody in the room, but by a technologist. And so, for being a technologist, that's very encouraging. But I think the one thing that you may want to be able to carry back and think about with your teams, or with the banks that you interface with, or with the industry, is what is the customer experience, right? It really, much of the digital transformation that we've seen in the banking sector has been driven by the customer experience. And I mentioned ad tech, right? The application of ad tech into the banking applications that individuals interface with, whether consumers or corporate banking or wealth management, whatever the individual client is, those tools are replicating the experience of a Facebook, the experience of a Google, the experience of a world that has already been driven and continues to be driven by digital transformation. When you think in the direction of the customer and the services that you want to deliver and the experience you want the customer to have, the ability to predict the type of instruments or products that you want to give to your customer by analyzing large sets of data, that's digital transformation. And I think the final one, if none of those work, the final one is basic economics. How much, this is historical, right? How much does it cost to deposit a paper check at a brick and mortar bank, a traditional bank branch? It's about $5. This is a United States number, $5. When 20, 30 years ago we went to ATM machines, the price dropped 10% of that $5, 50 cents. So for a bank to move to an ATM machine and encourage its customers to use ATM for its banking, that saved them 90% overhead. How much does it cost to deposit a check with your phone? Another 10% of the 50 cents. So to use your phone is now 5 cents to deposit a check. There's a lot of fraud you can absorb to encourage your users and your community to move to online banking, especially on the cellular level, on the mobile phone. And that is a basic economic analysis that, if nothing else works, will absolutely drive transformation.
Gonzalo, ¿quién rankea a las empresas o fondos en su grado de sustentabilidad? ¿Hay un estándar global, un benchmark? ¿Qué es lo más utilizado para esto?
Bueno, yo no he entrado en detalle de exactamente el número de criterios que se utilizan a la hora de crear ese rating de sostenibilidad. Pero para que os hagáis una idea, esto solo en temas de gobierno corporativo se manejan unos 800 criterios por empresa, en temas medioambientales 1.200 y en temas de sociales casi otros 1.000. Si estamos hablando de 3.000 puntos de información a la hora de crear ese rating de sostenibilidad. Nosotros en el banco trabajamos aproximadamente como con 10 providers independientes de información en distintos campos, tanto medioambientales, sociales como de gobierno corporativo. No existe vamos a decirte, un punto de referencia, de decir esta entidad es la que mejor lo hace, hay muchos independientes, pero es muchísimo trabajo. Yo quizá compartir varios temas que estamos viendo ahora mismo. Nosotros ahora mismo en cualquier interlocución que tenemos con cualquier inversor institucional, a nivel de compañía, a nivel de estrategia de inversión o a nivel de cualquier tipo de interlocución, uno de los epígrafes que ya nos obligan a nivel de regulación es hacer un disclosure de toda la política ESG que tiene la firma, no solamente a nivel firma, sino a nivel de gestión, de asset management. Y luego, bueno, pues una conocida, yo creo que si googlean en Internet, pues tiene Sustainalytics, es una de las más conocidas, pero tienes un montón de compañías providers dependiendo especializadas en distintas áreas. Ahí he sacado un tema también muy interesante, que es el tema del labeling, es decir, todo lo que es el tema de marcaje, quién da el label. No hay el label ISR, que lo he mostrado yo en alguna de las slides que he presentado, no es un tema que esté totalmente aceptado a nivel general, pero se está avanzando. Es decir, ya hay, en Francia en particular, se ha avanzado mucho en el tema del labeling. Es decir, lo que pasa es que en Francia, por ejemplo, es curioso, en Francia es el único mercado del mundo donde el label ISR lo tienen los fondos monetarios, fondos de dinero. Es el único mercado del mundo, pero en fondos de renta fija. El label ISR es un tema que se está ya empezando a hacer mayor aceptación, y que sepan ustedes que, por ejemplo, casas como Mercer para todo el negocio institucional o casas como Morningstar ya están empezando a dar un rating de sostenibilidad ISR a las distintas estrategias de inversión. Se está moviendo el mercado. Pero bueno, como decía al principio, es decir, yo creo que al final hay muchísima información. Aquí también juega el tema de artificial intelligence, es decir, cuando haces la selección de una compañía, ya no es el análisis financiero tradicional, sino también todo el criterio ESG con 3.000 temas de datos. Todo eso tienes que integrarlo en un sistema de gestión, que el portfolio manager tenga capacidad de todos los ratings, con lo cual ahí nosotros también estamos invirtiendo muchísimo dinero y muchísimo tiempo, y tenemos un equipo nosotros de IA, de inteligencia artificial dentro de la propia banco, que son un grupo de 10-12 personas que están trabajando en cosas distintas, porque creemos que por ahí va a ir el futuro, ¿no?
Bueno, podría hablar mucho tiempo sobre estas nuevas tendencias, pero lamentablemente estamos limitados por el tiempo. Así que muchas gracias, Frederick, muchas gracias, Ron, y muchas gracias, Gonzalo, por sus exposiciones.